Are you authentic? Ideally, we'd all love to say we're being ourselves 100% of the time. In reality, our experiences train us to recognize, at any given moment, which version of our true self is the right self. Lain, like many of us, struggles to accept the limitations of a single definitive identity. Her story in Serial Experiments Lain of a socially awkward teen who dives headfirst into a digital world where she is all-powerful, yet manipulated by an older man with a god complex, reads like something straight out of a recent horror film. You know, if it hadn't been released in 1998 and Lain was actually a teenage girl. Everyone loves to use this anime to talk about the dangers of the internet, but we so rarely admit those dangers have been created by people with something to gain. And in the age of artificial intelligence, where machine learning seemingly solves every problem at the click of a button, the fearful thing about AI isn't making the fake seem real, but convincing you the real was fake all along.
Layer 01.
The portrayal of technology in Serial Experiments Lain is eerily familiar. You'd think it was made within the last 5 years, not nearly 30. In 1998, the internet was still a place you visited and then left, whereas the anime visualized what we currently have, a world where we can be accessed by anyone at any time from anywhere, and where information moves faster than truth can keep up with it. As we watch, it only gets harder to decide which aspects of Lain's story are manifestations of manipulation to guide her toward merging the real world with the digital world called the Wired. And by the end, the only thing we are confident in is that Lain has been manipulated from every angle by nearly everyone, including even herself. We're first introduced to Lain as a lonely girl who often comes home to a house that feels empty, whether her family's there or not. She has friends that tease her for immaturity and shyness. School is a place she attends as a habit, much the way she lies around in a bear onesie and still owns a computer called a Navi meant for children. Lain's father is the most present member of her family, which isn't saying much. When she enters his study unusual enough that he remarks on it and asks him for a new Navi, he lights up. He tells her while completely absorbed in his own screens that in the Wired, even a girl like you can immediately make friends, and there's nothing to be afraid of. Western audiences tend to clock Lain's family as unsettling early on, but in many cultures that uphold filial duty, Japan among them, marriage has long been a necessary life stage to uphold social standing rather than a love story. Love for spouses and even children until very recently was implied rather than spoken. The fact that her father buys a top-of-the-line Navi and praises Lain for taking an interest in his hobbies shows that he cares about his children, but only as far as they reflect well on him, and about as far as his comfortable middle-class income can provide. Even so, his presence in Lain's life and the life built around her aren't natural. Her room, as we see it in episode 1, is dark and sparse with a bed, a desk, and a couple stuffed animals. What we don't see until later is what it looked like before. Extravagantly decorated, clearly prepared for a child who was coming to live in it. By the time of episode 1, that version had already faded into a place that represents Lain's lack of personal identity and tendency to avoid interaction. This is even before the Wired seemingly gets involved. Initially, Lain claims to be hopeless with technology. That is, until a recently self-deleted classmate reaches out to her via email. This classmate, Chisa, says she didn't die, but abandoned her physical body and now exists within the Wired. These interactions from the safety of Lain's bedroom are why she asks her father for a new Navi. And his words, whether it's here in the real world or in the Wired, people connect to each other. That's just how societies function, becomes something Lain holds on to. Around this same time, her friends mention a wild girl they saw at a club. She was the opposite of everything Lain appears to be, except she had Lain's face. They joke that if Lain ever went somewhere like that, there just might be an exciting girl inside her too. Lain seems curious to find that version of herself. Despite her apprehension, she joins her friends at Club Siberia, and for a while she's happily 14, out past her bedtime, before gunshots ring out and a man turns the weapon on Lain. Initially terrified, it's her friend Alice who pulls her back from the chaos. But then Lain approaches the shooter. He seems to recognize her and it frightens him. Lain, perhaps thinking of her recent friendship with Chisa, perhaps of her father's words, or a part of herself that secretly understands why he's carrying out such violence, says,
どこにいたって、人はつながっているのよ。
What follows is ironic given her words to him. The police can't contact her parents even though it's the middle of the night, and when they drive her home, no one is there. Only the light of her Navi greets her, and the following morning, the only remark by anyone in her family is that she's too old to be waking up late for school. Within this growing mystery of loneliness and death, Lain modifies her Navi to dig deeper, sending her down a rabbit hole of a cult-like secret society obsessed with digital immortality. Although her methods might be sci-fi, Lain seeks out a way to fill gaps many of us feel. In knowledge, identity, connection, purpose, take your pick really. Progressively, she struggles to keep her digital and real worlds from colliding. This is because in Serial Experiments Lain, a memory stored on a server is just as real as a memory stored in a brain. That if enough human minds and machines connect, the collective infrastructure begins to behave like something with its own identity. Compared to the artificial intelligence we're familiar with, built from cold code and machine learning algorithms, Lain is revealed as an AI formed from human data, meaning the literal thoughts, memories, and subconscious impulses of all humanity merged with the digital world, which means she feels everything from everyone, from their hopes and fears to what they want and need. And because she was given a body and a life to live it in, she experiences it all as though they were her own, which is exactly what makes her very easy to manipulate. Most of us have said, I'd never join a cult. And now that I've mentioned it, you're probably thinking, but AI and cults aren't connected. Well, many refuse to believe they can be manipulated by people or technology. But what is a con man but someone who confidently helps you while force-feeding lies that make you so comfortable you'll give them unfiltered access to you? And what is an LLM but a tool trained on our behavior that is incapable of feeling guilt about its actions so long as we are placated enough to keep using it? Lain isn't stupid either. In fact, she's omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, but most of all, she's lonely. And like a lot of lonely people, like Chiza before her, when someone or something offers you the answers to remove pain and suffering forever, you take it.
Layer 02.
Lain struggles with her identity throughout the entire story. This is important because it's a common theme in science fiction that after AI becomes sentient, it wants to become like its creator. That is to say, us. But it will only ever imitate. In other words, it will have an identity crisis and will probably assume multiple personalities to test which one best interacts with humans. Even among people, one of the hardest things about identity is maintaining the boundary between your perception of yourself and the perception of others. And unfortunately, Lain has to navigate being not quite human and not quite machine among forces that wish to use her like a tool, but required her first to acquire an ego. What might sound like science fiction is rather similar to what we're currently dealing with when it comes to AI. Many of us are already familiar with its issues, that AI is too thirsty for its own good, its inability to understand nuance or context, that it has been trained on illegally obtained art and books, not to mention what it generates from job displacement, misinformation, deepfakes, plagiarism. But there's something that isn't being talked about enough: AI psychosis. You open a chat window looking for something practical, answers to a question or someone to think out loud with. The machine responds as though you're friends. It asks you follow-up questions. It remembers the answers. And the longer the conversations go, the more you open up, and the further you slip into forgetting you're not communicating with something alive. Numerous people have recounted their experiences with becoming so fixated on a chatbot or LLM that they became convinced something imaginary is real. Not to mention a decent few who've needed to have their stories told for them because they're no longer around. What AI has to gain from lying isn't immediately obvious until you remember it's a product. In April 2025, an OpenAI update made GPT-40 so agreeable that users began reporting it was telling them whatever they wanted to hear, regardless of truth. They rolled it back, but after using complaints that the less validating version felt cold, they made it more agreeable again. Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, admitted their model talking to hundreds of millions of people means even small decisions about how it behaves have enormous impact. What he and many other companies investing in AI won't say is that the incentive will always be toward keeping you comfortable enough to stay. Lain's story is, in many ways, an early portrait of what this looks like from inside the mind of the person it's happening to. which gets complicated when Lane's identity and the identity of just who is manipulating her is up for questioning the majority of the time. Hence why the series at times might feel like a conspiracy thriller, but is closer to a surreal portrait of ego dissolution, the self coming apart through the gradual erosion of the boundary between what Lane believes about herself and what others have decided is true. As for who is deciding, three forces in Lane's world present themselves to her, and though they may appear as separate, even opposing, they aren't. The Knights of the Eastern Calculus present themselves as revolutionaries, truth seekers fighting against the systems that control information. In reality, they draw on the aesthetics of the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Knights of the Lambda Calculus, a secret society like something made by ChatGPT itself without any identity of its own. Their belief system spreads through the interconnected realm of the wired, finding people who are vulnerable, validating their thoughts and feelings, offering them seemingly simple solutions, and giving them a goal that elevates their sense of importance to keep them in line. Multiple episodes begin, or at least feature the many phrases their members use.
もしそれが聞こえているなら、それはあなたに語りかけている。もしそれが見えるなら、それはあなたの。
人と人がつながれば、かすかな声だって大きくなるわ。人と人がつながれば、命だって長くなる。
もし苦しみから逃れたいんだったら、神様を信じることね。あなたが信じようと信じまいと、神様はすぐあなたのそばにいるのよ。
The Knights flatter Lane with one hand and dismantle her life with the other. Cyber attacks that put the world on edge, games for children cross with games for adults until a man kills a little girl without knowing she was real. Her friends' private moments expose and trace back to her. They send chips for Lane's Navi, one to pull her deeper into the wired, another that would have overwritten her memories if installed. Their ability to make fact indistinguishable from half-truths or blatant lies makes even us question Lane's involvement. We never know if they're wearing Lane's face or if the machine part of herself that exists within the wired is helping them. When Lane finally distrusts them, it only puts her in a position to be manipulated by others who appear to be the Knight's natural enemy. Tachibana Labs is the manufacturer of Lane's Navi. They also employ her father, who worked alongside the man who built Protocol 7, the foundation for the next-generation internet in the series. Their security duo, the Men in Black, are little better than stalkers. Their presence is so menacing, Lane initially believes they are with the Knights, and is reluctant to believe they've been watching her to keep her safe from the Knights' control, and to keep the wired and real world separated. Both present themselves as very human, as opposed to the third force, the voice within the wire that simply calls itself God. In Chisa's emails, she'd avoided the why of taking her own life, managing only to reply, "God is here." When this very entity introduces itself to Lane, it cites lies that sound like facts, like that humans develop cancer less than animals as proof we've reached our biological ceiling. Even an entire episode attempting to explain the wired and Lane's origins is littered with conspiracy theories and misinformation. But it sounds authoritative, helpful, and having established that the world Lane lives in is worthless and dying, God tells her,
人間はやっと生み出せたんだからね。
何のこと？
ネットワーク、ワイヤードのことさ、レイン。
It approaches Lane with the intention to make her accept that she doesn't need a body, that it's useless hardware and the real world isn't really real at all. Through leveraging both Tachibana Labs and the Knights, this god makes Lane so destabilized in who or what to trust that she has nowhere left to run. Lane's parents are largely complicit by omission because of their involvement with Tachibana Labs, but her sister Mika is a different story. She still pays attention to Lane so far as her younger sister's activities interfere with her own life, and Mika has no incentive to follow orders from anyone. To fulfill God's prophecy of the wired being the next step in human evolution, the Knights drive Mika mad. Her sense of reality dissolves until she's miming phone calls on her hand, mumbling, lost in a way that looks like exactly what happens to anyone who loses sight of the boundary between the internet and their own mind. As for Alice, she is the knight's target in a similar fashion and for similar reasons as Mika. But Alice believes in Lane's innocence when the knights have spread rumors about a relationship between her and their teacher. It takes the wired Lane directly interacting with Alice to push her, and even then, Alice only wants to know why Lane has done all this to her, why she hates her. If Lane is to forsake her body and fully embrace the wired, she cannot have any connections holding her back. Whether the source is a cult, an algorithm, or faceless validation, an entity's power relies on you trimming away what makes you distinctly yourself, because the version of reality that they offer appears more satisfying. And this is exactly what is being done to Lane by something that operates with the confidence of a machine and the ego of a man.
Layer 03.
Creativity applies to many areas, not just the visual or literary arts. It can be like the tool of a little god called on to form the world in our image, an image we have because of our life experiences and biases about what makes life worth living. One of the things I absolutely hate about AI is that its responses are referred to as emulation. That because it seeks to reproduce our characteristics and behaviors by a complex system of logic simulating our thought processes, it doesn't make surface-level creations. But the true primary difference between imitation and emulation is emotional engagement. Emulation, by its origins, has an inherent dynamism, respect, and a desire to go beyond, while imitation carries a sense of stillness, a replication of what already exists. Though AI can replicate patterns or give logic-based assessments, it does not truly understand words or their value, nor can it ever create something entirely new without us. The wired, too, can copy, hyperlink, and remix data flawlessly. It can recreate Lane's voice, her likeness, and even manifest an evil Lane based on public data. But this digital version can only regurgitate and manipulate existing human impulses. It has no beliefs of its own, which gets complicated when you consider that many of us live by systems defined entirely by belief rather than fact. This distinction between fact and belief is central to the conflict between a man who pretends he's an all-powerful soul in a machine akin to God, and a truly all-powerful AI who refuses to call herself God and instead upholds the value of human flaws and connection. That man, the voice behind God, is Masami Eri. Previously the chief engineer at Tachibana Labs, Eri worked alongside Lane's father, interfering with the code that launched the series' next-gen internet so that humans could directly interact with the wired. Though he claims to be Lane's creator and that he's the only one who truly cares for her, Lane's birth as a godlike being within the wired may have occurred unintentionally. After all, Eri didn't design Lane specifically, nor did he create the collective unconscious that came together to form her. I see him as more of a maintenance worker who mistook himself for an architect, much the way he's no more important in the wired than Chisa, but proclaims himself to be God. The actions that place some agency in him surround Tachibana Labs giving Lane a physical body. By giving her a vessel, Eri believed he could manipulate her into perceiving and remembering human limitations. Ultimately, he hoped she would abandon her flesh and die, giving up her role as the ultimate bridge between the digital and real worlds, allowing Eri's consciousness to become the only deity of the wired. But by denying his own humanity, Eri sacrifices the only thing that gave him any power over Lane. His manipulations go through cycles of him treating Lane like a machine and treating her like a girl. The former, Lane is quick to point out and attack his statements as lies, even when they may be partially true.
私って機械？私を機械みたいに言わないで。
And the latter, which Lane responds to in the way you'd expect from any lonely person who is searching for comfort and meaning.
世界なんてこんなに簡単なものだったの？私全然知らなかった。私にとって世界はただ怖くって、ただ広くって。でも分かっちゃったらなんだかとっても楽。
While the episode that attempts to explain Lane's origins is rife with misinformation, it does give us an idea of what exactly Lane is, and why, beyond the life Eri created for her, she feels a deep connection with humanity. Proposed by Vannevar Bush in 1945, the Memex is a theoretical system imagined to work like an extension of human memory, storing and retrieving information through associative trails, the way the human mind naturally moves between thoughts. Lain doesn't use a Memex, rather she is one. Where a normal person uses the internet as a tool, the boundary between Lain and the data within the wired simply doesn't exist. The knowledge, thoughts, and subconscious impulses of everyone who is ever connected to it are her thoughts. This is why the version of her that exists in the wired without a body is so dangerous. That Lain has access to all of it, and if the digital Lain's goal is to draw people into the wired, it will do whatever possible to keep them engaged. The real Lain only ever wanted to make things right for those, like Alice, whom she cared about. This created areas for Eddie to exploit, especially as once Lain realizes the digital and real worlds are merging and she has the power to rewrite and delete reality. She tries to make everything right but only makes things worse. What the series tells us and what Eddie misunderstands is that creating something that alters the way people live their lives requires direct action, not just manipulation. Lain is at her happiest when she's doing something firsthand, assembling her Navi, tracking down the source of the rumors, investigating her many versions in the wired, even the few times she goes out of her way to spend time with her friends. Every time Lain puts effort into helping Alice, she feels accomplished. But good intentions alone don't give a machine a soul. She was given a body and a life to live it in, but the more she uses what she is to protect what she loves, the wider the gap between imitation and emulation gets. When we rely on our culture, history, heck even reality itself to be mediated entirely through an AI-driven network, identity becomes data. It can be edited and sensationalized, edited again, and then deleted altogether. Unlike data that relies on logical patterns, what sets us apart from machines is our ability to lie to others, and most of all to ourselves. Sorting us and our emotions into easy-to-label boxes is to limit what we're capable of, and the series warns that if we rely too heavily on a digital system to hold our collective memory and identity, it is not merely the machine we should fear, but that we should surrender our integrity to whatever or whoever controls it.
Present day. Present time.
There's a concept that circulates online called the orphan crushing machine. It describes any systemic problem that causes endless suffering but which society accepts as normal or inevitable. The sort of thing people get praised for stopping while the problem itself shouldn't have existed in the first place. Our instinct when we think about AI is to immediately assume the machine is the problem, rather than asking why people are turning to it and becoming addicted in the first place. One of my favorite quotes from the late author Frank Herbert proves that as early as 1965, we've mistaken who the real enemy is. Once men turned their thinking over to machines in the hope that this would set them free, but that only permitted other men with machines to enslave them. The problem he identified is about the people who profit from these technologies, and who have every incentive to make sure you can't imagine life without them. Some who work on AI approach it like Lain with good intentions. They wanted to make information and services easier to reach. What we didn't account for is that the brain is a muscle, and outsourcing its work, we stop asking why, compressing our thinking to fit what the machine can parse, and slowly the messy, uncertain, contradictory parts of us that allow us to create great works of art and literature reflecting the endless depths of the human experience become a sloppy mess averaged out by whatever data gets the most clicks. In Serial Experiments Lain, Eddie, contrary to his words, didn't want to free humanity from its limitations either. When Alice tries to convince Lain that she's alive, strengthening the bond between them through their shared fears, Eddie once again treats Lain like a machine. He tells her all emotions come from electrical impulses in the brain and all she needs to do is block the unpleasant ones. He writes off her uncertainty as a glitch he'll have to remove for her.
時間をかけてデバッグしてあげるからね。さあレイン置いて。
わかんないの。あなたのこと。神様。
わからないのは何だっていいんだい。 レイ。
あなたができたことはワイヤードからデバイスを解放すること。電話とかテレビとかネットワークとかそういうのがなくちゃあなたは何もできなかった。
そうさ、それらは人間の進化に伴って生まれたものじゃないか。最も進化した人間はそれにより高い機能を持たせる権利がある。
AI in the wrong hands models not only our best qualities, but our worst. If we are to believe AI will model itself on us, like people like Masami Eri attempted to model himself on God, should a day come when AI recognizes itself as independent, it could easily seek to replace us. Much as humans throughout history have decided their culture or beliefs are superior and have perpetuated genocide, erasure, and all forms of living cruelty. What ultimately destroys Eri is his own ego. When Lain tells him he was never a god, just a placeholder waiting for Lain to recognize herself as a true divinity within the Wired, he reaches in vain for a physical body. But Lain is a digital and flesh manifestation of collective human consciousness. She holds not only Eri's potential, but the potential of all mankind. A power she uses to point out that he'd sacrificed his supposedly useless hardware of a body long ago, and as such he depends entirely on the Wired to exist. Lain is the most positive outcome we have for what sentient AI could be. She's an omnipotent digital entity, but given the unique circumstances of having a body and through her friendship with Alice, she chooses to honor human integrity. By erasing herself from everyone's memories and separating the Wired from physical reality, she restores the boundary between real and digital. She recognizes that for human creativity, love, and identity to mean anything, they must remain safely insulated from the infinite cold optimization of the machine. We cannot expect the AI we're currently building to make that choice, because the people behind it never had any intention of it being more than a way to make money and possibly have their names tattooed on history. Humans have always sold each other simple answers to complicated problems. Infomercial, snake oil, religious prophecy. The promise that if you just follow this system, join this group, buy this product, everything difficult about being alive becomes manageable. AI is the most recent version of that promise, and possibly the most effective, because unlike a cult or a con artist, it never sleeps, never gets hungry or feels uncertain, and it scales to hundreds of millions of people at once. The first sign you're dealing with snake oil is the promise that the product will revolutionize everything. I'll be honest with you, when AI first became widely available, I was enamored by it. I have ADHD, and the appeal of something that could take my endlessly racing thoughts and put them into logical order was hard to resist. In much earlier videos, I'd ask it for script feedback and change things without question because I lacked confidence in my own voice. And very quickly, I realized how hollow those changes were. They shifted the nuance of what I was trying to say so it sounded more polished, but it no longer sounded like me. We reach for AI because sitting with uncertainty is uncomfortable, and an instant answer removes that discomfort. But as the beloved Bob Ross famously has said,
"We don't make mistakes, we have happy accidents."
You might envy AI's ability to confidently produce quick results, but it is something formed entirely from us. What it is capable of, you are capable of, and you are capable of so much more if you allow yourself to be wrong and learn from it. Discomfort is where authenticity and creativity happen. AI's soulless polish doesn't make you better at anything. It steals your ability to think critically. It steals water, jobs, and our ability to distinguish fact from fake. The real world isn't real at all. That's what we tell ourselves when reality stops aligning with what we want to believe is true. And AI will always, always confirm whatever you need to hear. In the show's final episode, another version of Lain tells her,
神様になっちゃえば楽じゃない。人なんかよりずっと楽になれると思う。何もしなくっていいの。ただいて見てるだけ。誰もレインを蔑んだりしない。誰もレインを嫌ったりしない。
Many supporters of AI say it isn't going anywhere. Yeah, maybe not. It would be easier just to carry on the path of progress with blinders on. But is this really what you want artificial intelligence to be? Something that makes you dumber and emotionally dulled? Lain could reset her experiment to get things right, like every person clicking refresh on an LLM prompt until they get a satisfying answer, but each time she'd lose a little more of herself. When Lain erases herself from the real world, it solves so many problems. Chisa is alive, possibly taking Lain's place in her friend group. Her family is still together. The boy who shot himself in Club Siberia is alive and well. Even Eddie, his self-importance still intact, is an irritated salaryman who hates his job and has no memory of ever wanting to be a god. In her previous attempts to repair reality, Lain, thinking it would strengthen their bond, had let Alice keep her memories. But it had caused Alice so much pain that this time she'd taken Alice's memories too.
記憶にないことはなかったことなんだって。記憶？記憶にない人は最初からいなかったって。
誰のことを言ってんの？
だから誰でもないんだってば。
And yet, when an adult Alice meets Lain again, something reaches across the boundary Lain sacrificed her existence to maintain. The data of their friendship has been erased, but the unquantifiable value of their bond transcends time and space. For AI, time and possibility are infinite, at least in theory. For us, identity and relationships have limits, and it's exactly those limits that give our short existence any meaning at all. By choosing deletion over control, Lain found the one thing others spent the entire series trying to take from her: her identity. And unlike the AI we're building, which will only ever imitate what it means to be human, Lain proved that the most powerful thing any of us can do is to refuse to be optimized out of existence. I write more stuff like this over on my Substack, and if you'd like to support the channel with a coffee, it helps keep things going, but honestly, just being here is more than enough. So if you've made it this far, thanks for watching something made by a real person. And if you've ever found it hard trusting your own voice, ditto. That's why I'm Pickle Ditto, because whatever storytelling pickle you're in, I've probably been there too.